Hello, my goodness. I'm sorry it's taken so long to fire this thing up. Um, can you hear me? Initially I had used a different streaming service and now we're using EV and I would start about 5 seconds before to hit the like go live button. And that was the last service I had. Now on this service, boy, it takes a lot longer to fire up. So I'm very sorry about that slow start. Thank you and welcome to How-To Diorama today. We're going to take a look at my D&D Diorama, which is right there. And I've got a lot of pictures that are going to be a heck of a lot nicer to look at than just that. So if I go over here, I worked on the street level of the diorama this week. I did a little bit of the interior things. And so I'm going to show you that stuff first, and then I'll dive in and show you the later stuff that I did on the street itself. Okay, so can everybody hear me? I'm not 100% sure. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. I've got some earlier comments, but I don't see any comments after I actually got this thing fired up. Okay, so we're just going to dive through. We're looking at the roof today, this new level that I put in front of Barrett's coffee house, but we're going to start with some bar stools. So at the end of last week, oh great, thanks very much, Paul. And Swear Grills, thanks very much for coming on by. I really appreciate it. So here is the little tiny bar that I made, and I'm going to grab it out of here just to show you because I really like this little bar. Made this, week ago, and really fun. Haven't put anything in the back yet, but I do plan on putting stuff in there. But I made these. These are going to be some stools. I just started. I turned these little discs on my mini lathe, and then this really helped me. I hand drilled these little holes, not all the way through. Heck, one went through, but not all the way through. And then I also drilled holes in the end of the little legs that I cut. And then if you look very closely there, I pinned them. I put little brass pins in the end of them and secured them. And man, I'll tell you, when it came to this point, putting those on there, making sure they were all perpendicular or actually angled properly against a perpendicular side there, I was able to mount them a lot easier than just trying to glue them on there. I thought they were too delicate to just glue on there without the little pins. So the pin was great. Got those on there, and then went ahead and put these little bands around the bottom. And to do that, what I didn't, basically I just looped a bunch of the wire that I'm using to do those little foot rails along the bottom. And then I had to cut the sections. I was thinking, oh, I can just do a circle and mount it inside. No, it was just a mess. So I ended up cutting little sections of that curved piece of brass that I used. Worked great. So that is how that went. And I'm really happy with these little stools. I used a little bit of clear lacquer on them at the end, and I'm doing for all of the furniture. I'm doing that. I think the inside stuff can have that lacquer. The outside I want flat, So let's take a look at this. So this is the roof, and previously I had built it. I'd done the streaking that you can see in the background, but I hadn't gone in and done any of the detail here to get it to look like it actually had some weathering and stuff like that. It was just all base stuff before. So this is adding first off some moss. And after I got them, and I'll show you how I did the moss, but after I got the moss on, I just took some regular leaves, and I had these from before, and you crush them up, and then we put on there. Now, this is ready for the leaves, and I want to talk a little bit about the moss. I'm going to move this over here, and if I set this here, you can see what the heck I'm talking about. How's that? So what I did was oh, I'm sorry. You are giving feedback. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see. I'm going to cut out my I just went ahead and cut out my speakers. Maybe that's going to help with any kind of feedback. Scott's here. Just got home from shopping for. Wow, that's a heck of a trip. Darn, Scott. Glad you're back. Steven, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm echoing. I just turned off my speakers. I hope that's helping. I haven't done sound checks on this, though earlier I did a test. Hey, Waylands, wow, Waylands is here. Thanks very much for coming on. I did do a test, and it seemed that it had no feedback. So, gosh, I'm sorry. Please keep me updated. I'm gonna keep I'll keep an eye on that and try to do some stuff here. But thanks very much for that feedback and welcome everybody for coming on. So when when I did this, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to do that. When I did this, it was not that I put the glue on and then put on this the Woodland Scenics green small turf, fine turf. It's still there. Gosh darn it, Steven, I'm sorry about that. Is anybody else having that sound issue? Because when I listen to my test back, sorry, it sounds like we've got an echo somewhere. If anybody else is hearing that echo, please say so. I'd really like to get that sound dialed in. That can be very annoying. I don't know what. I'm going to look here. Again, it's a new service, so thank you very much. I'm going to turn down my gain. Just a touch there. And then looking at my settings for my audio, I've got echo cancellation on. I'm going to turn that off. I don't know if that's good or bad. So if anybody has any comments on the sound, I'd love to hear it. Okay, Stockton says, okay, sounds okay to me. So, and then Paul says, yes, there's a bit of an echo. Folks, I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to work on that. Yeah, I'll try to take that gain down one more. Can you still hear? I'm going to continue talking and showing stuff, but if it's too low, I'll turn it up. If I've got the speakers off, better with echo off, bring up volume. Okay, okay, okay. So our volume is back up. So the volume's up. Thanks very much for helping and sticking with it, folks. I really appreciate that. It's a new service. I should have probably done a peer-to-peer setup and tried that beforehand. I did do a test yesterday and it seemed to work. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what we're talking about, but I am going to be checking those messages over there. So when I put this on here, what I did was I started out with a little bit of Mod Podge, and I took a little cup and I put my Mod Podge and water in the cup, and then I put this fine turf in the cup too. And I made a little sludge of this moss, and that's how I went ahead and applied it. So I want to make that clear. I think before I said, that I had dabbed it on, which is true, but the best way to do it was making a sludge of that fine moss. So the other thing that happens here is if you're looking at it from a little farther away, if you're not right up on it, I'm just checking messages here. If you're not right up on it, you don't really see the moss, which is good. I don't want you to just have, because I've seen some that it's like really super bright and it's like almost a neon green and it stands out. And again, these are for like Warcraft and stuff like that, where I think the genre is a little bit more colorful. It's a little bit more comic. And I don't say that negatively. It's just that's the genre. It's more of a fun. I don't know. It's not realistic. And I'm trying to do mine a little bit more realistic, though my scale is bonkers out. It's just not great scale. I still want to be as realistic with the details that I'm adding as possible. So that's what I did here. I've got that on there, but if you get real close, you can really see the moss but I think it looks quite natural, and I wanted that. And then, of course, when you're further away, the moss almost disappears. Now you see the leaves, which is great, but that was the effect I was going for. I thought about maybe adding more after it dried because it didn't look this dull when I first did it. But then I really looked at it and said, man, that looks like my roof before I put, the moss off stuff that you do on your roofs. So yeah, I'm very happy with this, and it worked out great. Now, when it came to the leaves, putting the leaves on, that is where I tried to think of how the leaves are going to gather with wind and things like that coming across the roof, and they always seem to gather in the channels, stuff like that. So I did just place a little bit of Mod Podge and water here, sprinkled those on, and then kind of patted them in, and then I tapped off the excess. I just wanted to stick what was going to stick. I have not placed any kind of sealer, any kind of flat over this yet. I plan to do that once I think I'm quite done. There may be some things at the edges of the roof line where I want to come back and maybe add a little bit more down here. I tried to have it gather here because the roof line does flare at the bottom, as you can see. And so I did want to possibly add a little bit more down here, but then I'm going to shoot it with a flat clear when I'm done to try to seal things in as best I can. I have done this in the past with things, and your clears can change your paint colors. They can change your tones and stuff like that. I'm really kind of afraid of that, but I'm going to go forward. But I have had that happen on some very fine detail. It will, the right or I guess the wrong kind of clear will go in there and affect the paint and make it blend a little bit where you had a sharp edge. Sometimes it'll blur that edge because it'll I don't know what they call it. There's a word for it, but the paint will be affected by it, and it'll get liquid again and start to flow together. So just be careful on your stuff. I've had it happen. I didn't like it. Now I'm a little bit more prepared for it. So that's just something that can happen. Let's go and look. Nope, not there. We're going to go here. And that's the slide. After I got some of that green on, I put on those leaves. And again, pretty happy with it. That's how it stands today. And then let's start going down the rest of this and see what I did down below on the street level. So the entry of Barrett's coffee house has always been elevated, and it's always been a plan to go ahead and bring that back. Bring it back so that I had, sorry, I'm trying to figure out the screens here. Bring it back so that I had some kind of higher end. I wasn't sure, higher entryway, be it stone or wood. I wasn't sure. I thought, it'd be kind of cool to make a stone set of steps, kind of like outside of a library or a government building. You have these stone steps kind of going out and maybe at angles because it's on a corner. I thought that would be pretty appealing. But then dealing with the angle, that was the thing. When you look at this, the whole thing is sloped. It's coming downhill, and around that corner, the whole thing drops away. And I thought, goodness, I'm gonna do it out of wood. I'm much more competent in wood. And so I started building this up. This is all, I'm using the same stuff as I used before. It's some walnut, beautiful, beautiful wood, really nice to use. And when I build these things, because I'm not like a professional carpenter, though I'm a woodworker, there's a lot of skill differences between carpentry and woodworking, right? A woodworker builds in small scale, and though we're thinking of structure because you want it to be structurally strong, it's a different kind of structural sense that you have as a woodworker. In construction, when you're building a structure, everything is about load and stability, shear, racking, you know, all these different things. And so you have to kind of shift a little bit. So, and it's very fun when you're doing it. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and show these steps, because when you're thinking about building something like this, I'm literally thinking about, okay, how is this thing going to hold up? How is this structure going to do the thing that it's meant to do? And the reason I'm going so deep into this is I've had a few comments this week about, and it was very nice, but they say, you know, going into the detail that you're not going to see, or it's not that you didn't have to do it that way, or like, why are you doing it that way? It was, I'm glad you are doing it that way, because if you look deep enough, that's the detail that you expect to see. Does that make sense? I want to make sure that the illusion or the miniature world that I'm trying to create doesn't fall apart if you start to really get interested and really dive in and start looking at it. You know, you see it from afar and you get a little bit closer and it's like, oh, there's more things to see, and you get a little bit closer and it's like, oh, then there's all these things to see. And then if you get too close, then you start seeing the mistakes, and you start seeing the things that were, it wasn't that big a deal, nobody will notice that. You know what I mean? And then that kind of kills it. That kind of, I think it sometimes kind of takes the illusion that you're trying to present and destroys a part of it. And I'm just trying to do the best job I can to not let that happen, because I really like looking really closely at stuff and really finding things, you know. And that's that, you know, that was in one of my videos. I've talked about this kind of thing for a long time, you know, building your story and all that kind of stuff. And for people that do get engaged, for people that do, you know, find it so interesting that they're really happy to be able to see and look and stuff like that. I really want to give them a reward, almost like an Easter egg, or I want the detail to stand up so that they're not disappointed, because I'm disappointed because if I think, man, you could have done this or you could have done that, you know, like an opportunity left on the table, that whole sales mantra thing. I'm trying to not leave any money on the table. I'm not trying to leave any opportunity unturned. I'm not, I mean, even to the point where you give, you know, suggestions and say, hey, about this, I'll do it lots of times. I mean, there's lots of stuff that's influenced by other people in this, because it's just a wonderful idea. And I just want to do as many of those as I possibly can to get that detail up to, you know, that level. The fantasy never falls apart. Doesn't matter how close you get. And that's something that I got directly, that idea. I got that from my own experience, but also from watching special features from like Lord of the Rings, when they're talking about building the set, building the miniatures, building all of the stuff that they did for Lord of the Rings. Now it's 25 years ago, believe it or not. When they talk about that process, they explain that in the special features. And I've been watching those special features since they came out, because it's one of my favorite movies, but the special features I've watched well more than the movie. And in there, they talk about that. Don't let the kind of place, the setting, the feeling that someone gets when they look at what you're doing and they say, wow, this is cool. It's a jungle, I'm in a jungle, or it's a castle, I'm in a castle. You know, don't let that fall apart. You know, really try to make sure that the closer they get, the more they find, not the closer they get, the worse it looks. You know? So it's a philosophical thing. And because I had so many questions and comments about that, I wanted to talk about it. So, hey, Daniel's here. Hello. Home from Forge. Thanks very much for coming in. Please tell me if you should have any echo or anything like that. I think there's an automatic delay in this new service that I'm using. This is called EV instead of StreamYard. And so there's a few settings that I had in StreamYard like the delay that I haven't figured out yet. I believe that basically, I don't know what the delay is, but I believe there's a delay out there. So, the affronted, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Audio is all good. Wonderful. For folks that it is, maybe check your speakers. It's possible maybe your stuff is a little bit up, but I did turn off my speakers, so maybe that's helped. Okay, so let's get back to this. Sorry. So I'm starting to build this, and I'm doing it as like, structurally, how is this thing going to hold up? And what I finally, found was I'm going to have these areas underneath it and good size areas. So instead of closing the center of these three little sections, I left them open. You see there, well, there's going to be more that you'll see here in a second, but I left those two middle areas open. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have storage in there. I don't know. It's open. It's not to be storage, but I think there's cats. Definitely going to have cats because I have my cats, my 1/35 scale cats that'll be underneath there, and like some old bags, some old burlap, just some whatever. Not necessarily garbage, but things that have been discarded. I guess garbage, but there's got to be something underneath there. So cats are the number one thing, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Maybe some rats as well. So then I did on the end of it, I did just some steps. And then this is the other side. And I wasn't quite sure. I'm like, man, do some steps? It's a lot of steps, it's just higher up and just all that goes with it. Well, what I finally decided to do is, well, here I'm putting a railing on. But what I finally decided to do is make a lower level and make a loading bay. So here's the third, what I was trying to say earlier, that third opening. So there's actually going to be three openings under this whole construction. Here's a loading ramp. And then I did put some grooves in there. So that's the whole construction. I've done, a little bit more to it. I started putting rails on it. I had this chain, started using a little bit of annealed wire. Now this is 24 gauge annealed wire. And I love using this kind of wire because, look, I was first using copper. Use copper wire all the time. I think the problem with that is it's sometimes hard to tarnish or it's sometimes hard to paint. Stuff will flake off. A lot of these wires, when you get them, they've gone through a coating process. If you leave some of these wires out with no coating on them, it's just bare wire, they could rust. They could, all kinds of stuff could happen to them. So they put this really, really fine coating on them. And it's clear, and it keeps it from doing that. Well, it also keeps paint from sticking to it very well. Annealed wire is a little bit different. It maybe has a little bit of oil on it, but not a lot, to keep it from rusting. But the surface of it is rough. It's not smooth. It's not a polished surface. And so it accepts the paint very well. It also accepts glue because there is that little micro texturing on the surface. So annealed wire, it also bends very well, the annealing process that makes the wire quite flexible. But that's a great thing for your dioramas. Scott says, I'm trying to bring you up. Any chance a homeless person would be under the boardwalk? That's a great question. I'm not sure. That's the other thing. And that is something I asked myself when I was doing the weathering. So this is Barrett's Coffee House. This is in Krondor, which is the western capital city of the kingdom. There's it's kind of like the Western United States. There's a big pass. Then there's the eastern realm of Mid-Kemia, and that's where the kingdom is in Rillanon. That's where the king is. And then the prince is in Krondor, and he's second in command of the kingdom. So this is a kingdom city. So that's number one. Barrett's Coffee House, which is what I'm modeling here, is kind kind of like the start of the stock exchange. It over time, what happens, as he explains in the story, is money lenders came there to set up syndicates, to do purchases, to talk with other people that had goods to sell and stuff like that. And it kind of mimics the start of an exchange, like a stock exchange, right? So this is a very high end coffee house. It's got food, it's got all kinds of stuff, and it has clientele that pay to actually have seats and tables on the upper floor in Barrett's coffee house. I don't know if it's going to see very well on camera because it's so far away, but this is the ground level of Barrett's coffee house. This is the upper balcony of Barrett's coffee house, and that's where they have like nice round little tables and tablecloths and stuff like that. So that's the high end. So when I was doing the weathering, which we're getting to, I was trying to decide, okay, I've got some grass sprigs up here and I've got some dirt, it's medieval time, so streets have dirt and, is there going to be grass, little tufts of grass coming up right in front of Barrett's? No, I don't think there is. And the issue being is it's a nice swanky place. They would send them out to sweep. They would send them out to clean. They would send them out to kind of make it as nice as possible. So that's kind of my thinking. And I think the same would be said of like a homeless person sleeping underneath there. I think they would shoo them out. The cats, it's a port city. There's literally across the street in front of it, in front of Barrett's here, that's the pier. There's a pier right there. It's right across the street from the pier. So I think the cats are inevitability. So that's kind of where I went there. But I am very much interested in other ideas because I want something under there. To fulfill the need to make sure that there's no falling apart of the story. I think number one, I'm going to have a broken up crate underneath there, like an old crate that somebody had. They opened it. And then it's kind of broken. The sides, I can just see it, it's like the sides kind of broken down so you can see into it. And then I'll put like something, and that's going to be one of the cats is going to be in there sleeping. It's going to be Oscar. I'll have Oscar in there sleeping like I did in my last diorama. And then some of the other cats will be moving around and doing stuff like that. And then what's Scott say? Let's see. Apologetically, I haven't read the book. No, don't worry about that at all, Scott. But I have to say, I don't know if you would like the book. I love it, but it's like castles and dragons and magicians and all that. I mean, that's what this thing is about. But let's see. You mean the difference between New York City and Wall Street? Yes, exactly. So yeah, that's exactly what I mean, Scott. But I do think I have read this book and these books for so many years that I recommend them to anybody that's into fantasy because it is fantasy. But Raymond Feist does a very good job of writing. I am the kind of reader, I'm not going to say it's like for kids. It's not. It's just an enjoyable, easy to read book. But I'm the kind of reader that if I don't like the writer's style, if I don't like how they form their sentences, whatever the case may be, how descriptive they are or descriptive they're not, or if they try to, like Hemingway, he's trying to talk in all kinds of flowery, I don't even know what the heck he's saying. I can't read Hemingway. That's just, I tried. Nope, can't. Because maybe I'm not deep enough to do it, whatever the case may be. I want you to tell me about the world and then I'll form the vision in my brain. Done. Okay. I don't want all the metaphors. I don't want all the flowery language. I don't want all the cursing like Stephen King. I'm not a Stephen King fan. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Well, I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just not a Stephen King fan. There's too much. I don't know. It's too, I don't like the language of the people in Stephen King books. I don't like people talking that way. I'm not going to say I don't swear, but I don't want to Anyway, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But Raymond Feist, when you read his book, he's able to describe things in a way that you can just pick it up very nicely. But also, you're filling in the blanks, of course. And you're building this little world in your mind as you're reading it. So when I, step into building this thing and I'm trying to figure out what to build, all these images come back because of how well that author was able to get across these images, was able to, describe this world, talk about the different elements of the world and stuff like that. That's why I like this writer so much. I can crawl into the book and I can be there. So that's one of the great things about this. I'm not really, creating this diorama completely out of my head, of course. I'm relying on the world that Raymond Feist wrote and described and created with his own friends, because Raymond Feist, the backstory to all these stories was the fact that the world of Midkemia was built while Raymond Feist was in college with his D&D group. He played D&D in college in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, I think it was. And San Diego State or UCSD or whatever. And that group created the world of Midkemia. And then, he becoming a writer was able to pull on that great depth and build this. So, man, it's, you think about it, just this one little diorama, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of world building behind it, and I'm just pulling little chunks out of it to build this, which is fun. And I've always talked about, your storyline can be your plan. Your storyline can help you guide through the process of building and answering those questions for you. When you're following a book, when you're following a movie, when you're following a story that you're quite familiar with, that whole process of building becomes fun because you're just trying to fulfill that story that you already know. You're just trying to build that story that you've already built in your brain just from reading it. I love it. I absolutely love it. And Scott says, I grew up reading Heavy Metal magazine. Yep, absolutely. Eon Flux and any World War II comic book I could find. Scott, I was a huge heavy metal fan. I've still got some of my heavy metal books. Absolutely loved heavy metal. Reading those. That's awesome. Whelans, I think Feist Group called themselves a Thursday night writers. There you go. You're absolutely correct, Whelans. And it was just such a neat story. And I'm sure part of it, at the beginning of the book where he credits them, I'm sure part of that was an agreement. You better, because this is our story. You got to do that. But also you can tell there is a thankfulness in thanking those people. It doesn't look like just, some requirement. It looks like a real world that they built together and they love. And I believe that Raymond, I don't know that Mr. Feist went back and conferred with them on stuff. I don't know anything about his relationship with those people except what he writes in the books. But wouldn't that be cool to be able to say, I'm going back into our world and this one's a little bit off, and then he confers with them? How fun would that be? A world you created, 35, 40 years ago, and you're writing a new book in that world. I just think it's fun and just really enjoyable books. And I also think that there's they're kind of keyed toward growth. It's a lot of times you start out with a young boy, and then he grows to adulthood. Most of his early books were like that. Later on, they change, and it's more sorcery and stuff like that, and other worlds and all that kind of stuff, which is also very, very enthralling. But I think his earlier stuff on Midkemia, the Serpent Wars, the Novindus, and all that kind of stuff, there's just a whole world there, Scott, that if you're looking for something like that, you can really immerse yourself in it, and it's quite fun. Mrs. Modelcraft has read all those books as well. And so it's fun because you can then have a common language other readers of the books. And I just, yeah, see, I'm just going off on a tangent there. But wonderful books. Please look them up. They've been around for a long time. There's a bunch of them that have been converted to audiobooks, and so you can listen to them online as well. I do that. I have the audiobooks that I listen to while I'm working. It's awesome. Love it. So, I'm sorry. I'm so excited about this stuff, and I get talking about it and I don't want to stop. So, I used this here stuff to put these chains along here, and I have a nice little chain there, and then the last one drops so that you can unload. So what that is that is a loading dock, because I don't have another one on another street. That's a loading dock so they can take stuff in there, take it up the ramp. This is a little bit different. So now this is right in front of the door to Barrett's. And the idea here is that that high-end clientele that I'm talking about, they would pull up in a carriage, and the doorman, because there are two doormen, very, very clear in the book, there are two doormen that open the door for people. Well, I extrapolated from that to say they would pull the carriage right up to the front. The doorman would come up, lift a chain. The ball thing in there is to steady someone getting off of their carriage. And then, they can come into Barrett's Coffee House. Actually, I do. I want to come back here and show you a little bit further away. So there's the door and how it fits up to the door. And then there's that with the chain on it. So, yeah, I really like, how that all came out. And I really like that entryway and how it kind of, that high-end clientele, you're trying to cater to them. So even your entryway is, catered to the high-end people. They're coming up with the carriage, boom, let them in. So anyway, I thought that was fun. Now we're going to start weathering the street. So here, so my fun mix of sanded grout and Mod Podge, I put that on there and I went very light. It's the color of sanded grout I use is called Haystack. So it's kind of this light tan. It's a nice contrast with the darker stuff. And so I'm able to kind of see where it's going. I wanted a gathering there, but I didn't want too much. I also built the grating finally for that drain. That has been there forever, and I had not built a grating for it, so I did that as well. And then I started adding a little bit of plants here and there, little grass sprigs and stuff along there. These have not been trimmed back. So I did this yesterday. I think Scott was there yesterday and testing this new streaming service. I just did a quick live and I was showing, putting that stuff in. Eventually that'll make its way into a video. So you'll see it there. But what I do is I put those in, let it get completely firmed up. Then I'll come back and I have like an old beard trimmer, down right there. And I use that to trim these down. And the beard trimmer works great on this stuff. Don't use if you have one, don't use a new one because it's a completely different substance. But yeah, it works great. So I just take my vacuum up to it. So it takes, and this is a tip, I guess. When you're doing it, have your vacuum right there. If you go in there, the first time I did it, I just kind of was going in there and I'm like, yeah, that looks pretty good. Then I vacuumed. And then it took all the stuff away. And I'm like, oh, I went too far. So by having the vacuum there, and I did that on the very next one, it worked perfect. As soon as you go down there and you kind of buzz away some of the stuff as you're trimming, it's out of there so you can see real time what you're doing to that little shrub or the grass or whatever. So really, that's something I'll do. And this hasn't been done. I do not want them this tall. There might be a couple of tall ones sticking out like they do, but there's going to be a lot of lower stuff. So that'll be all trimmed down. Oh, sorry. I'm hitting the wrong buttons. Sorry about that. There we go. That is right under the little loading dock. And then this little section I actually glued in yesterday. So this is the bottom of the warehouse. This is Rue's warehouse. Whelans would know this is not exactly in the right place, but for the diorama it works. But this is Rue's warehouse, and he's sharing that with the upright man or the salacious man. I'm not sure what they were calling him at this part of the story. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be talking in code, but these are some of the things that are in the book, and I don't want to go too off on a tangent there. But it's Jimmy the Hand. Anyway, I don't want see. I almost went down that road, but here is like some corner, again, still needs to be trimmed. But the other thing is a lot of times in cities and streets, and I know this because it happened in our town a lot. Somebody will come through and clip a corner of a building on something. They're hauling a cart and they don't judge it right and they clip the corner of the building. Now, where I live, that happened. It was years ago. They don't allow that kind of traffic in town anymore. But some people would get messed up and they bring a semi through and they clip a corner of a building. Happened a lot. Well, I thought, I have to have that in here. So that's one of the things that when you're thinking about, your terrain detail stuff, I haven't finished it here. I've started doing it, but I painted over it and now I've got to scrape it back. But on the corners, I'm going to have them like damaged slightly, a little bit of frayed wood, a little bare wood, I think is going to be important to make it, look like somebody has damaged the building coming around. And then just some more. There's that little curb there, and I wanted grass up next to the building, but also in the street, in the muck of the street. So I didn't want to have the grass just up there. Here's the other side. Now, I don't like the colors that I have here now. That's the only thing I'm not really happy with. I got the dirt down fine. I think it looks good. And I want to talk a little bit about the amount of dirt. I talked about this yesterday as well on the little quick test live stream I did. Sammy Model Maker, whom I think is a secondary channel for Sammy Model Bow. I don't know, and I really don't want to mess it up. And I should have looked before I even said anything. But anyway, Sammy Model Maker just had a really neat video come out. And if you've seen it, it's really well done and very, very nice. And it's a medieval street, and it's about this big by this big. It's like a shadow box, so it goes in, and it has a framer on the front, and it kind of goes in. And it's all done out of paper, and it's just gorgeous. Absolutely fantastic. The street, though, was mostly dirt. And you think about a medieval city, yeah, they're going through with cattle, they're going through all that kind of, so it's mostly dirt. And there were like a couple of cobbles here and there. And I hadn't done my weathering to my street yet. And I looked at that and I go, wow, that looks great. Because it does, it looks fantastic. He's put mud down, dirt, he's put some debris in the dirt, so there's like hay and stuff like that. It's spectacularly done and looks fantastic, the whole thing. Oh, the other thing, and I think I will take this from that. He didn't use just white on the buildings. On my buildings, they're basically just this. I used an off-white, it's like an ivory for my colors. He used some different colors for his buildings, looks way better. And I think I will use that from Sammy Model Maker's video. Thank you, and please look at that if you want to see a really, really nice medieval city. So when it came to laying down this, remember that whole thing about this is Krondor, this is the second biggest city in the kingdom, and blah, 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 blah. That's my differentiator between Sammy Model Maker's diorama and my diorama. If I didn't know better, I would just go to Sammy's. It's just beautifully done. It totally looks like you would think it would look. But mine is in a capital city. It's, that whole thing again. That's why I think having more cobbles than dirt is important for me. And I'm not trying to justify it. I just want you to know that that's my thinking. And that's why I'm doing it distinctly different than someone that you see it and you're like, that's what it should look like. And you're right. But I think it's a little bit more rural. I think that would be a little bit more of a rural kind of medieval town. Maybe the majority of towns look like that. And I would like to do it because it just came out so nice in a different diorama. But in this one, being a capital city, you know, second largest city in the kingdom, yeah, it's all paved, it's all cobbled, it's all, you know. So that's the big difference. And so I really battled with that. And so I just wanted to mention it because you know, when you're doing something, you're building something and you're super excited about it and stuff like that. And then somebody else that you respect, well, then you didn't have to know who it is. I don't know why I said that. I just really like what Sammy does. You see what they do and it's like you never even thought that way. And that looks like the way to go. So I was like, wow, you know, that totally looked real and it totally looked what I would think of. But then I thought, wait a minute, you're on a certain path. That is your diorama, you know, and this one's mine. So anyway, it was fun. But when you see somebody that does something just so remarkable, you're like, man, I should be doing it that way. No, don't. Stick with your vision. I could have said that a heck of a lot longer ago. Anyway, so let's get back to this. I got to change the color. Don't like the color so much, but I do like the amount of dirt that is there. And I'm very, very happy with it's not too much. So this is pretty much where we are. That is what the street looks like. I'm going to go with more of a brown. You see there's more of a greenish tone to it. There's also some darker tones in the background and the shadows that I need to get out of there. And so I got to get rid of the greenish and get back to a brownish tone. And then just continue to work on it. I did do some weathering to the new little boardwalky area and stuff like that, but there's going to be a lot more. Like I said, I've got things to put underneath. And then I've got to start thinking about the pier. I've got to start working on the pier that's in front of it. But that is the progress from this week. And I had a heck of a lot of fun doing it. And if anybody is interested in this kind of work, because I see a lot of work that is remarkable out there, you know. Sammy's was all done out of paper and foams and things like that. Can't tell when it's done. But I think that when I build this, I'm looking for something a little bit different. And I don't want to make this a big comparison. It's not. It's just I want to get to the point that I just made a little bit ago. Stick to your vision. Stick to what you think is fun. Do what I think you want to add to whatever anybody else is doing out in the place you're doing it, you know? I think it's that unique vision from everybody that brings everything up and everybody gets to experience different views and different types and stuff. And your view, my view, is going to be different than somebody else's, you know? I hadn't seen one done like Sammy's before. So Sammy is doing exactly what Sammy wants to do, and it looks wonderful, and it's a wonderful example for other people to follow. And I think if I do anything, if I can be an example, or like one little tidbit or one little thing that I do, somebody says that's awesome, and I want to do that in mine, or take a part of it and even modify it so it's nothing like mine, but that was the genesis of it. Brilliant. That's wonderful. That's a win for me. Because it is about trying to get out what I'm doing. I'm not sharing the things that I build to try to impress anyone. That's not the goal of the channel. It's not. The ultimate goal of the channel is to teach and to give back. Because when I was learning how to do something that I absolutely love to do right now, it all came from seeing other people do it. And I felt like when I started building my stuff, it's like none of this is mine because all of it came from somewhere else. Obviously that thought process changed, thankfully. But it is a wonderful, I think, thing to be able to get to a point where you feel like you've got something that you could share that will help someone else. That's a pretty neat place to be. And I hope I'm there. I think I am. Not just to say, hey, that's neat, but more to the point, I can do that too. I would like to do that. I've thought about doing that, and I wasn't exactly maybe sure where to go. I didn't know anybody else was doing it. You know, if this person knows how to do it and I watch, then I can learn how to do it and I can do what I want to do with it. You know what I mean? That right there is the goal, and I hope I'm providing that. I hope you're enjoying it. So thanks very much. I think we're pretty much done today. I'm going to go back over here and see what we got. We got that. So I would love to say thank you to my patrons, and I got to go back to that because I got a new patron, Scooter Pumpkin Shooter. I think it was there last week as well. And it was really neat because Scooter Pumpkin Shooter was on last week on our third week group build on Sunday. So it was really fun. Came in for a little bit. We got to talk, got to meet each other. But we have another one of those tonight. So every Friday night for our patrons, what we do is 2 hours, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time, U.S. Pacific time. I'm in Seattle, near Seattle. So it's 6 to 8. So all patrons, you can be in there. If you're not a patron and you would like to join in, it's $3. It's everything on the site is $3 on my patron site, and you can come in and we're all there and we're talking, and I can have up to 12 guests, which is great because previous software I could only have 7, so I can have more people on now. So that is tonight from 6 to 8. I hope some of you can make it. And if you're thinking about it and you're not sure, and you want to just send me an email. You know, you can email me on my channel. It's bill@scalemodelcraft.com. So, you know, you can email me and say, hey, you know, I'd like to come in for one just to see if I like it. Sure, why not? I think I can do that. Well, I know I can do it because I can just send you the link. So that is what I got for you this week. I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday. We are looking at some snow tonight and tomorrow, so it's going to be a fun weekend for building, that's for sure. And I hope everybody, you know, gets a chance to get on your bench too. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm really good. I think I'm good at answering questions. Please, please, please ask, because this is my job. It is what I do. My profession now is miniature building. How cool is that? So thank you so much. Hey, Randy is here. Hello, Randy. Thanks very, very much for coming in. And I appreciate that. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you. So, folks, I really appreciate it. If you'd like to come in tonight, just go head on over to Patreon, find me there, and you can come in. Scott, I hope you can make it. Remember, we didn't be able to do it. I'll send you one if you can do it. Just tell me. You know, and we can do it later, you know, we can do it whenever. But thank you very much. You're an awesome teacher. Well, thank you. I would like to get better. And so your comments and your feedback makes me better because I do want to get a fair amount of information.